This is Adam Betts, and today I will be covering Exercise 5 in Chapter 2 of How to Think Like a Computer Programmer. The goal of this program, which we're going to go and label by the chapter exercise for class, and to give a brief description of what we're going to do, is we're going to take a user input of time, and we are going to generate the accumulated interest given this. This is given by the formula A equals P times 1 plus R over N to the NT. To do this, our principal is given at a set value of $10,000. To do so, we're going to set this as P equals 10,000. We're not going to enter a comma because this is simply going to be, a vector point of 10, 0, which we do not want. We want it to actually be 10,000. Our rate of interest is set at 8%. Again, we cannot just put, remember 8 is not a number, 8 would be 800%. So we're going to change this to decimal of 8%. And make sure to put the 0 leading to make it a little more clear that this is a actual decimal point, even though something as simple as deleting the 0 and this would work. This just makes it a little bit neater to read later and look over. Our final value given is n equals 12, which is the number of times this would be calculated. And without going too much into it, the number as it gets larger and larger really doesn't change as much after you get a certain point, but there's, for most banks, they do it monthly, so that's how we're going to do it for this as well. Now, our final dependent, or for a dependent variable, A, we're going to go ahead and put in this formula of P equals, or P times 1 plus R divided by N. And since Python respects numerical operations and the order of operations, we can leave this as it is. And we got to raise this to the power of n times t. Now, just putting n will not, nt will not do anything. It will look for a variable nt, which we do not have. We want n times t. Now, to define t is going to be a user input. And to do this, we will be changing this. So let's set a variable for our time response. And we're going to set this to an input from a user. And this input will, let's say, time interest will accrue. That sounds good and official. And that's going to be it for that. Now, t will be assigned to this time response, which would normally be the case, but however, this is going to be a floating point integer, meaning it's going to be a decimal. It can be any value. It can be 1, it can be 10, it can be 10.56, however they'd like to set it up. So we need to make sure to define this as a float, so whenever it's recalled, it recalls this as a decimal point. Now, taking all of this, we want it to print a response after the input is put in. And let's go for an initial investment of, and let's just go ahead and be fancy and go close this off to make sure this is text. Make sure this is a string being output. And of P, so we're going to add P to that, which will recall our value of P and add it to the previous statement. Dollars over, oops, not decars, dollars over T, and time, and add another plus T in order to concatenate the string to make it all one thing, with the T being a variable that we can decide, we can define, or the user actually defines in this instance. So it comes back up, years at an interest rate of R. And we're going to go and multiply this by 100 to make that rate look like an actual percent. And will yield, let's go and add a dollar sign in here to make it actually look like it's a currency. And the last little piece of the puzzle, A. And if this goes appropriately, which we will save this under chapter 2.5 YouTube. Oops, let's go and add the and we'll figure out what's going on. Now, unfortunately, our t is not defined properly. So, we will see what we actually did wrong, because fortunately we can learn a few things from this and go from there. The time should be an input, which is coming from a user response, and t equals float, which t probably should be defined. So we're going to move this up. And place this right here. And make sure everything is defined properly. And as you can see, the order of this matters. So time response needs to be set up before here too. Since we're assigning t to a value, we need to actually define that value before we use it, since it's only going one line at a time. After fixing that, we actually see that it pops up properly. The time interest will accrue. Let's say over 10 years. Push enter, and we get an initial investment of $10,000 over 10 years. An interest rate of 8% will yield $22,196 and 4.44023454471. That's a little bit crazy. Most people don't think of anything below a single cent. So we're going to change this a little bit, and we're going to make sure A is an integer, which should bring it up. Unfortunately, it would cut off a decimal point. So the way we're going to get around that is we're going to multiply A by 100 to bring it up to 2 decimal places. And then we're going to divide that integer by 100 again. And that should give us a cleaner answer and round off those pesky fractions of a cent. So we'll resave this and run it and try this again. And lo and behold, we're sitting at $22,196.4, which is a little bit cleaner to look at. So we can just check this again to make sure that anything else that we run will do this. And let's put 9, and we get $20,495. $20,495.30, or $0.3. And to one final test of this, let's just put a 1. And it looks like we get $10,829.99. This is Adam Betts going over how to do a user input and actually get something to come out of it and make it, user format. Hopefully this is instructive, and I will be seeing you again.